Yuna stood outside the massive doors of the Vraxian embassy ship and tried not to think about the fact that she might die today. Not from space pirates or engine failures or any of the normal dangers that came with working in deep space. No, she might die because she had just volunteered to babysit 3 alien children whose species was known across the galaxy as the most dangerous predators in known space. The doors opened with a hiss that sounded uncomfortably like a growl. Lieutenant Kim. Ambassador Thaler stood before her, towering at nearly 3 meters tall. His body was covered in dark scales that shifted between deep purple and black. Bioluminescent stripes ran along his arms and face, glowing a soft blue. His eyes were large and yellow with vertical pupils that contracted when he looked at her. "You are certain you wish to accept this assignment?" Yuna swallowed hard but nodded. "Yes, Ambassador. I'm ready." Thaler made a sound that might have been a laugh or a warning growl. Yuna couldn't tell which. "You are the 8th liaison sent to us." The others lasted less than 1 day. The Zentari diplomat ran screaming after 10 minutes. The Quillan representative locked herself in the bathroom for 6 hours and refused to come out. Even the Korthian, whose species prides itself on bravery, requested an immediate transfer after my youngest tried to play with him. "I understand the cubs can be challenging," Yuna said carefully. "Challenging." Thalor repeated the word as if tasting something bitter. "Lieutenant, my children are not challenging. They are Vraxian. We are hunters. We are predators. Our instincts tell us to stalk, to chase, to pounce. My cubs are only 6 cycles old. They do not yet have full control over these instincts. When they see something small and quick, they hunt it. When they see weakness, they test it. When they are excited, they forget that their claws are sharp and their teeth are meant for tearing meat." Yuna thought about her 5 younger siblings back on Earth. She thought about her brother Minho, who once stuck 17 pieces of chewing gum in her hair while she slept. She thought about her sister Hana, who convinced their youngest brother that he could fly and needed to prove it by jumping off the garage roof. She thought about family dinners that turned into food fights and camping trips that ended with everyone covered in mud and someone always crying. "Ambassador," she said with more confidence than she felt, "I grew up in a house with 5 younger siblings. I've dealt with tantrums in grocery stores, fights over toys, and the time my brothers decided to see if they could flush action figures down the toilet. Your cubs might have claws, but I've survived worse." Thaler studied her for a long moment. Then he gestured for her to follow. "We shall see." They walked through corridors that were too warm for Yuna's comfort. The Vraxians preferred higher temperatures than humans. The walls were smooth and dark, with strips of blue light running along the ceiling. Yuna could hear sounds coming from somewhere ahead. Clicking noises, something that might have been growling. A crash followed by high-pitched chirping. "My mate and I must attend treaty negotiations," Thaler explained as they walked. "These meetings will last for many days. Normally, we would bring our cubs with us, but the other delegations have expressed concern. They fear my children. They do not understand that cubs must play, must explore, must learn. They see only teeth and claws." "That must be difficult," Yuna said. She meant it. She had read about Vraxian culture during her training. They were a close family species. Parents rarely left their cubs with strangers. "It is necessary." Thaler stopped outside another door. From behind it came the sound of something breaking. "Your task is simple, Lieutenant. Keep them alive.
Keep them fed.
Keep them from destroying the embassy ship. If you can manage this for 3 days, you will have done better than any liaison before you." The door opened. 3 small Vraxians immediately stopped what they were doing and turned to stare at Yuna. They were each about the size of a large dog, though their long tails made them seem bigger. Their scales were lighter than their father's, more gray than black, and their bioluminescent stripes glowed in multiple colors instead of just blue. The largest had green stripes and was standing on top of what looked like an expensive piece of furniture. The middle one had red stripes and was hanging from a light fixture. The smallest had purple stripes and appeared to be chewing on something that was sparking slightly. "Cubs," Thaler said in a voice that carried command. "This is Lieutenant Yuna Kim. She is a human. She will care for you while your mother and I attend to important matters. You will treat her with respect." The 3 cubs tilted their heads in unison, studying Yuna with bright, intelligent eyes. "Father," the largest one said in clicking, chirping sounds that Yuna's translator earpiece converted to words. "Is she food?" "No, Kresh, she is not food. Can we hunt her?" the middle one asked. No, Vala. You may not hunt her. The smallest one, still chewing on the sparking object, simply made a noise that sounded like a question mark. And no, Tor, you cannot eat that. Give it to me. Thaylor held out his large hand. Reluctantly, the smallest cub dropped what appeared to be some kind of electronic device into his father's palm. You see what I mean, Lieutenant? Yuna did see, but she had prepared for this. She reached into her bag and pulled out her tablet. With a few quick taps, she activated the video she had downloaded before leaving Earth. It showed a compilation of baby animals doing cute things. Puppies rolling around, kittens playing with yarn, a baby otter holding its mother's hand while floating in water. The effect was immediate. All three cubs stopped moving, their eyes fixed on the screen. Their bioluminescent stripes began pulsing in sync with each other, which Yuna's research had told her meant they were interested or happy. What? Kresh climbed down from the furniture and moved closer. What are those? Baby animals from my planet, Yuna said. This one is called a puppy. This one is a kitten, and this one is an otter. They are so small, Vala said, dropping from the light fixture to land beside her brother. Are they prey? Some people keep them as companions, Yuna explained. Like friends who live with you. Friends. Tor approached slowly, his eyes never leaving the screen. Can we see more? Yuna smiled. I have hundreds of videos. We can watch as many as you want. Thaylor stared at her as if she had just performed magic. They are calm. They're interested, Yuna said. Children are children, Ambassador. They want to explore and learn and see new things. These videos are new to them. The cubs had now completely surrounded Yuna, all trying to see the tablet at once. Their earlier wildness had vanished. They made small, happy chirping sounds as a video of baby ducklings waddling after their mother played on the screen. Thaylor shook his head slowly. Perhaps you are different from the other liaisons, Lieutenant Kim. Perhaps you will last more than one day. He moved toward the door. I will return in 3 days. Try not to let them destroy anything important. And, Lieutenant? Yes, Ambassador? If they ask about hunting the small animals in the videos, the answer is no. Then he was gone, and Yuna was alone with 3 predator cubs who could probably tear her apart if they decided to. But right now they were too busy watching a video of a baby elephant learning to use its trunk. Lieutenant Yuna, Kresh said without looking away from the screen. Do you have more videos of the tiny earth beasts? I do. Show us all of them. Yuna settled onto the floor and the 3 cubs arranged themselves around her. Their scales were warm against her legs. Their tails swished back and forth in contentment. This might not be so hard after all, she thought. Then Vala looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes and asked, Lieutenant Yuna, what is a cookie? Yuna froze. What? A cookie. In the last video, a small human gave the puppy something called a cookie. What is that? It's a type of food, Yuna said carefully. A sweet food that humans make. All 3 cubs perked up immediately. Their bioluminescent stripes began glowing brighter. Can we have cookies? Tor asked. Can we make cookies? Vala added. Please? All 3 cubs said together. Yuna looked at their eager faces, their glowing stripes, their sharp little teeth visible in their hopeful smiles. She thought about how proud she had been just moments ago about winning them over. She thought about how her supervisor had warned her that Vraxian cubs were unpredictable and chaotic. She thought about all of this, and then she made a decision that would later prove to be a terrible mistake. Sure, Yuna said. Tomorrow I'll teach you how to bake cookies. The cubs cheered, their happy chirps echoing through the room. And Yuna, feeling confident and successful, had no idea what she had just agreed to. The next morning, Yuna woke up to find 3 small Vraxian faces staring at her from about 10 centimeters away. She screamed. The cubs screamed back, which turned out to be much louder and involved a lot more clicking and chirping sounds than human screaming. Sorry, Yuna gasped, her heart pounding. You just surprised me. We are ready for cookie making, Kresh announced. His green stripes were glowing so brightly they almost hurt to look at. We have been ready since the sun appeared in the window. Yuna checked her watch. It was 5 a.m. station time. How long have you been watching me sleep? Many minutes, Vala said proudly. We were very quiet, like hunters stalking prey. That's great. Very good. Yuna sat up and tried to shake off the deeply unsettling feeling of being watched while she slept. But before we make cookies, we need to eat breakfast. and I need to brush my teeth. And maybe we should all get properly dressed. We are dressed, Tor pointed out. He was wearing what looked like a small vest with pockets. Right, okay. Give me 20 minutes and then we'll go to the kitchen. The cubs looked at each other. How long is 20 minutes? Kresh asked. Yuna pulled up a timer on her tablet and set it. This long. When the timer makes a noise, 20 minutes are done. All three cubs immediately sat down and stared at the timer. They did not move. They did not blink. They just watched the numbers count down with an intensity that made Yuna wonder if they were planning to hunt the timer. She decided not to ask and went to get ready. 20 minutes later, exactly when the timer beeped, the cubs jumped up and rushed to the door. Yuna had barely finished putting on her boots when they started calling for her. Cookie time. Cookie time. The timer says cookie time. The embassy ship's kitchen was not designed for children. It was a large professional space with sharp corners, hot surfaces, and many things that could break or explode if misused. Yuna looked around and wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. But the cubs were already exploring, touching everything with their small clawed hands, making excited noises at each new discovery. What is this? Kresh had found the refrigerator. He pressed his face against the door, his breath fogging the metal. It hums. Is it alive? No, it's not alive. It's a refrigerator. It keeps food cold. Yuna opened the door and the cubs all jumped back as cold air rushed out. Then they rushed forward to stick their heads inside. It is like a tiny ice cave. Vala said, "What is this round thing?" Tor had found an orange. He picked it up and squeezed it, sniffing it carefully. That's an orange. It's a fruit. Can we hunt it? No, Tor, you don't hunt fruit. You just eat it. The smallest cub looked disappointed but put the orange back. Kresh had moved on to the sink. He turned on the water and immediately stuck his whole head under the stream. It rains inside. This place is amazing. Vala discovered the garbage disposal. She peered down into the dark drain, and her bioluminescent stripes cast red light into the depths. There is a hole here. It goes down into darkness. I think something lives in it. Nothing lives in it, Yuna said quickly. And we're not going to test that theory. Come away from there, please. While Yuna was dealing with Vala and the garbage disposal, Tor had climbed onto the counter and was now opening cabinets. There are so many containers.
What is in them all?
Tor, please get down from there. You might fall. I will not fall. Vraxians have excellent balance. As if the universe wanted to prove him wrong, Tor immediately lost his balance and fell. Yuna lunged forward and caught him, stumbling backward and nearly dropping him. Okay, new rule, Yuna said, setting Tor down gently. Nobody climbs on anything without asking me first, agreed? The three cubs looked at each other in a way that made Yuna think they were communicating silently. Finally, Kresh nodded. Agreed. Now can we make cookies? Yes, now we can make cookies. Yuna pulled out her tablet and opened the recipe she had downloaded. Chocolate chip cookies, simple, basic, what could go wrong? She gathered the ingredients one by one, explaining each to the curious cubs. Flour, sugar, butter, eggs, vanilla, baking soda, salt, chocolate chips. The brown chips smell interesting, Vala said, sniffing the bag of chocolate. Can we eat them now? Just a few. Yuna poured some into her hand and gave each cub a couple of chocolate chips. They popped them into their mouths and their eyes went wide. It is sweet, Kresh said, and it melts. Tor added. More? Vala asked hopefully. After we make the cookies. If you eat all the chocolate now, we won't have any for baking. The cubs accepted this logic, though they kept glancing at the chocolate chip bag when they thought Yuna wasn't looking. Yuna started explaining the process. First, they needed to mix the butter and sugar together. She showed them how to measure the butter, how to scoop sugar from the container, how to level off the measuring cup. The cubs watched with intense focus. It reminded Yuna of how they had watched the animal videos the day before. Like they were studying something important. Like they were memorizing every detail for future use. Now, Yuna said, we put the butter and sugar in this bowl, and we use this tool to mix them together. She pulled out the stand mixer and set it on the counter. The cubs had seen many strange human devices since Yuna arrived. They had seen her tablet, her translator, her watch. But they had never seen anything like the stand mixer. It was large and white with a big metal bowl that attached to the bottom. The mixing attachment looked like a metal whisk on the end of a mechanical arm. The whole thing hummed with potential energy. What is that? Kresh asked, his voice full of suspicion. It's a mixer. It spins around really fast to combine ingredients. It spins. Vala moved closer, her red stripes pulsing with interest. How fast? Pretty fast. Watch. Yuna put the butter and sugar in the bowl, attached it to the mixer and turned it on at the lowest speed. The mixer came to life with a soft whir. The whisk began to rotate, cutting through the butter and sugar, slowly combining them into a creamy mixture. The cubs were mesmerized. It moves without muscles, Tor whispered. It spins like prey running in circles, Kresh added. Can we touch it? Vala reached out one clawed hand. No, definitely not while it's running. You could hurt yourself. Yuna kept one hand near the power switch, ready to turn it off if needed. The cubs circled the mixer like they were stalking it. Their bioluminescent stripes were flashing in patterns that Yuna's research told her meant they were excited or agitated. Their tails swished back and forth. Their pupils had dilated, making their eyes look even more alien. Okay, you're all being a little too interested in the mixer, Yuna said. Let's take a step back, but the cubs weren't listening. They were focused entirely on the spinning whisk, the moving bowl, the mechanical sounds. Every instinct that made them hunters, every bit of predatory nature in their Vraxian blood was fixated on this strange device. Yuna should have turned off the mixer right then. She should have recognized the signs, but she was focused on the recipe, on measuring out the eggs, on finding the vanilla extract. She cracked an egg into a small bowl and turned to add it to the mixer. That was when everything went wrong. Kresh's tail, swishing in excitement, hit the speed dial on the mixer. The soft whir became a loud roar as the mixer jumped from speed 1 to speed 10. The creamed butter and sugar began spinning at incredible velocity. Climbing up the sides of the bowl, Vala, startled by the sudden noise and movement, jumped forward instead of backward. Her front claws caught the edge of the flour container. 5 pounds of white flour tilted, tipped and dumped directly into the spinning mixer bowl. Tor, trying to see what was happening, climbed onto a bag of sugar that Yuna had left on the counter. The bag split open under his weight. No! Yuna dropped the egg bowl and lunged for the mixer's power switch, but she had forgotten about the butter on the counter from earlier. Her foot hit the slippery spot and her legs went out from under her. She fell hard, landing on her back with a sound that knocked all the air from her lungs. The mixer kept spinning. The flour hit the high-speed whisk and exploded outward like a white bomb. It filled the air in a huge cloud, coating everything in a fine powder. The cubs, surprised by the flour explosion, all jumped in different directions. Kresh leaped onto the counter and knocked over the vanilla extract. Vala's tail caught the egg carton, sending eggs flying through the air. Tor, covered in sugar from the broken bag, slipped and slid across the counter, crashing into a bottle of honey. Yuna, gasping for breath on the floor, watched in horror as the kitchen transformed into a disaster zone. The mixer was still spinning. Someone needed to turn it off. She crawled forward, her hands slipping in spilled butter and egg. Kresh found the chocolate chips. In his panic and excitement, he grabbed the bag and squeezed. Chocolate chips burst out like dark rain, scattering everywhere, bouncing off surfaces, rolling across the floor. Vala discovered that honey was sticky, very sticky. It was now all over her red-striped body, and she was making distressed chirping sounds while trying to clean her claws. Tor, attempting to help, climbed into the sink to wash off the sugar. He turned on the water at full blast. Water sprayed everywhere, mixing with the flour on the surfaces to create a paste, mixing with the sugar to create a syrup. Finally, Yuna reached the mixer. She slapped the power switch and the terrible spinning stopped. The kitchen fell silent except for the running water in the sink and the quiet chirping of 3 very confused Vraxians. The cubs didn't understand why Yuna was laughing. In Vraxian culture, when cubs made mistakes, adults responded with anger or punishment. They used their size to establish dominance. They roared to show displeasure. They never ever laughed. Kresh took a small step forward. His green stripes were barely glowing now, a sign of submission and fear. Lieutenant Yuna? Are you broken? This made Yuna laugh even harder. She wiped tears from her eyes, smearing flour and frosting across her face in the process. No, Kresh, I'm not broken. This is funny. Funny? Vala tilted her head, still trying to pull honey from her scales. But we destroyed everything. We made chaos. We failed the cookie making. Yes, you did. Yuna took a deep breath and tried to calm her laughter. You destroyed my kitchen. You made a huge mess. And yes, we definitely failed at making cookies. The cub's stripes dimmed even more. Tor's purple markings were almost completely dark. He looked like he might cry if Vraxians could cry. But, Yuna continued, wiping more frosting from her hair, it's still funny. Look at us, look at this kitchen. We look ridiculous. She pointed at Kresh, who had flour covering his entire body except for 2 circles around his eyes where he had been squinting. You look like a ghost. She pointed at Vala, whose red stripes were the only part of her not covered in honey and various ingredients. You look like you fought with a jar of honey and lost. She pointed at Tor, who was dripping wet and covered in a paste made from sugar and water. And you look like you melted. The cubs looked at each other. Then slowly Kresh's mouth opened in what might have been a smile. Vala does look very sticky. I do not look sticky, Vala protested. I look strategically coated. Tor made a chirping sound that might have been a laugh. Lieutenant Yuna has white stuff in her hair. She looks like father when he is old. It's called frosting, Yuna said, touching the sticky substance again. And I probably do look pretty silly. Kresh approached carefully, moving slowly like he was afraid Yuna might suddenly become angry. He reached out one clawed finger and gently touched the frosting in her hair. Then he brought his finger to his mouth and tasted it. His eyes went wide. His green stripes suddenly blazed bright. It is sweet. It is very sweet. Let me try. Vala rushed over, forgetting about being careful. She scooped some frosting from Yuna's hair and tasted it. Oh, it is like the chocolate, but different. Tor joined them, and soon all 3 cubs were carefully picking bits of frosting from Yuna's hair and eating them. Hey, Yuna said, but she was smiling. That's my hair, not a snack. But it is so sweet, Kresh said. Did you put it there on purpose? No, it got there during the mixer disaster. The mixer disaster, Vala repeated slowly. Is that what we call this? I think it's a good name. Yuna looked around the kitchen again. Now that the initial shock had worn off, she could see just how bad the damage was. Every single surface was covered in something. The walls had flour handprints and honey smears. The floor was a dangerous mix of slippery ingredients. The ceiling somehow had chocolate chips stuck to it. We should clean this, Kresh said quietly. His stripes had returned to a normal glow, but he still looked worried. Before father returns, he will be very angry if he sees this. Will he hurt you? Yuna asked carefully. She had read about Vraxian discipline methods, and some of them seemed harsh by human standards. Hurt? Tor looked confused. No, but he will be disappointed. That is worse than hurt. Yuna understood that feeling. She thought about her own parents back on Earth and how the worst punishment was never being yelled at or grounded. It was seeing the disappointment in their eyes when she had let them down. Then we'll clean it together, Yuna said. She stood up, her clothes stiff with drying ingredients. But first, I think we should all wash off. We can't clean the kitchen when we're this messy. We'll just make it worse, the cubs nodded. This made sense to them. There are washing stations down the hall, Vala said. For when we get dirty during playing. Perfect. Let's go. They walked through the embassy ship corridors, leaving a trail of flour footprints, honey drips, and sugar crystals behind them. Yuna knew they probably looked insane. A human covered in frosting and flour, leading 3 small Vraxians who looked like they had been dipped in various baking ingredients. If anyone saw them, there would be questions. Fortunately, the washing stations were empty. They were large rooms with multiple shower stalls and benches. The cubs immediately stripped off their small clothes and ran for the water. Yuna had not expected this. Wait, you're just going to— Okay, you're already naked. That's fine. That's totally fine. She reminded herself that different species had different ideas about modesty. The Vraxians didn't wear much clothing anyway, and the cubs probably thought nothing of it. The cubs turned on the water and started scrubbing themselves. They made happy chirping sounds as the warm water washed away the mess. Their bioluminescent stripes glowed brightly as they cleaned, pulsing in patterns that looked almost like laughter. Yuna used a different stall and tried to wash the frosting out of her hair. It was sticky and stubborn, and she had to use a lot of soap. By the time she finished, the water running down the drain was tinted with butter and sugar. Clean and dressed in fresh clothes, they returned to the kitchen to face the disaster. Okay, Yuna said, surveying the destruction with fresh eyes. Here's the plan. We work together. We work slowly, and we make sure we clean everything. Everything? Tor looked at the ceiling with the stuck chocolate chips. Everything, Yuna confirmed. They started with the big pieces. Yuna found a trash container, and they picked up the broken eggshells, the torn flour bag, the split sugar bag, the knocked-over vanilla bottle. The cubs worked hard, their small hands carefully gathering debris. Kresh found a mop and tried to use it. The mop was taller than he was, and watching him attempt to clean the floor while the mop handle kept hitting him in the face would have been funny if Yuna hadn't been so tired. "Here," she said gently, taking the mop. "Let me do the floor. You three can work on wiping down the counters." She gave them each a damp cloth, and they attacked the counters with determination. Their claws made the work harder than it should have been. They kept accidentally tearing the cloths. But they didn't give up. Vala discovered that she could climb up the walls to reach high places. She scaled the kitchen wall like a lizard and started wiping flour off the upper cabinets. "Is that safe?" Yuna asked, watching nervously. "Very safe," Vala called down. "Vraxians are excellent climbers." Tor found the chocolate chips that had rolled under the refrigerator. He lay on his belly and stretched his arm underneath, making triumphant chirping sounds each time he retrieved one. Kresh took charge of organizing. He sorted the trash into different piles, cleaned items in one area and dirty items in another. He moved systematically from one section to another, making sure nothing was missed. They worked for hours. The cubs never complained, never said they were tired, never asked to stop. Yuna's back hurt from bending over to mop. Her arms ached from scrubbing. But every time she looked at the three cubs working so hard, she found the energy to keep going. "Lieutenant Yuna," Kresh said during a break, "why did you laugh? Earlier, when everything went wrong, why did you laugh instead of getting angry?" Yuna sat on the floor, too tired to stand. The cubs gathered around her, and she noticed that they no longer kept their distance. They sat close enough that she could feel the warmth of their scales. "Do you want the real answer?" she asked. "Yes," all three cubs said together. "I laughed because when I looked at all of us covered in flour and frosting, I remembered being young. I remembered when I was about your age, and my brothers and I tried to surprise our mother by making her birthday cake. We wanted to do something nice. We wanted to make her happy." "What happened?" Vala asked. "We used salt instead of sugar. The cake tasted terrible, and we also made a huge mess in the kitchen just like this one. My mother came home and found 3 children and 1 kitchen covered in cake batter." "Was she angry?" Tor asked quietly. "I thought she would be, but she just laughed. She laughed so hard she had to sit down. And then she helped us clean up and we ordered pizza instead, and it became one of my favorite memories." Yuna smiled at the cubs. "Today when I saw this mess, I remembered that day. I remembered that mistakes can become good memories. That trying something new and failing is better than not trying at all. And that sometimes things going wrong can be funny and good and special." Kresh considered this. "So you are not angry with us?" "No, I'm not angry. Are you angry with yourselves?" The cubs looked at each other. "No," Vala said slowly. I think I had fun. Even when everything went wrong. Even when we made the mixer disaster. It was exciting." "Me too," Tor agreed. "I have never had an adventure like this before." "Adventures," Kresh said thoughtfully. "Humans call mistakes adventures?" "Sometimes. When the mistakes don't hurt anyone and you learn something from them." "What did we learn?" Vala asked. Yuna thought about this. "Well, you learned that mixers are powerful. That you should be careful around kitchen tools. That flour explodes when you add it to things spinning very fast. And that frosting in hair is very sticky. And we learned that The rest of the day passed quietly, which Yuna learned was both good and suspicious when it came to Vraxian cubs. After the kitchen disaster and the long cleaning session, she expected them to be tired. Instead, they seemed energized, like the chaos had awakened something in them. "Lieutenant Yuna," Kresh said as they sat in the common room after dinner, "can we ask you questions about humans?" "Of course. How many cubs do humans usually have?" "It depends. Some humans have 1 child, some have many. My parents had 6. All 3 cubs made surprised chirping sounds. 6, Vala said. "That is a large family." "It was interesting." Yuna smiled at the memories. "Always loud. Always busy. Someone was always fighting about something, but also always fun." "Do human cubs have claws?" Tor asked, examining his own sharp talons. "No, we have fingernails, but they're not very sharp. We're not predators like you." "Then how do you catch prey?" Kresh asked, genuinely confused. "We don't really catch prey anymore. We grow food or we buy it from stores. Humans stopped hunting for most of our food a long time ago. The cubs looked at each other with expressions that clearly said they found this bizarre. But Father said humans are one of the most successful species in the galaxy, Vala said. How can you be successful without hunting? We use tools. We work together. We think of new ways to solve problems. Yuna considered how to explain human evolution to alien children. Humans aren't the strongest or fastest or most dangerous, but we're very good at adapting, at changing ourselves to fit new situations. Like how you laughed instead of being angry about the kitchen, Tor asked. Exactly like that. Kresh stood up and started pacing, his tail swishing thoughtfully. So humans survive by being flexible, by changing their behavior to match what is needed. I never thought about it that way, but yes, that's a good way to put it. That is why Father trusts you with us, Kresh said, stopping his pacing. The other liaisons could not change. They saw predators and were afraid. They could not see past our claws to see us as cubs. But you adapted. You saw us as children who wanted to learn. Yuna felt a warm feeling in her chest. You're a very smart cub, Kresh. His green stripes glowed brighter with pride. They spent the evening watching more videos on Yuna's tablet. The cubs were fascinated by Earth animals. They wanted to know everything about each creature, what it ate, where it lived, whether it was prey or predator. When Yuna showed them a video of wolves hunting in a pack, the cubs became very excited. They worked together, Vala said, like a Vraxian hunting party. They communicate with sounds and body language, Kresh added, watching intently. See how the leader uses his tail to signal the others. Humans used to hunt with dogs, Yuna explained. Before we had technology, we partnered with wolves, the ancestors of dogs, to hunt large animals together. So humans are pack hunters too, Tor said. Even though you are not predators, you understand pack behavior. I guess we do. As the station's artificial night cycle began, Yuna helped the cubs prepare for sleep. She was surprised to discover that they all slept in the same room, in a pile of warm blankets and cushions. Do you not sleep separately? She asked. No, Kresh said, sounding confused by the question. Cubs sleep together. It is safer, warmer, better. I see. Well, good night then. Wait, Vala said. Do you have to leave? I have my own room down the hall. All three cubs made distressed chirping sounds, but what if something happens? Tor asked. What if there is danger? There won't be any danger. The ship is very safe. What if we have bad dreams? Vala's red stripes had dimmed with worry. Yuna looked at the three small aliens and she remembered being young and afraid of the dark. She remembered how her mother would sometimes sit in the hallway outside the bedroom she shared with her sisters, reading a book, just so they would know she was close. How about this? Yuna said. I'll stay until you fall asleep. I'll sit right here in this chair and you can sleep knowing I'm nearby. The cubs' stripes brightened. Yes, that would be good. They arranged themselves in their sleeping pile, curling together in a way that reminded Yuna of puppies. Their tails intertwined and their bioluminescent stripes slowly dimmed as they relaxed. Lieutenant Yuna, Kresh's voice was quiet in the darkness. Thank you for not leaving after the mixer disaster. Other adults would have left. I'm not going anywhere, Yuna promised. Will you teach us more human things tomorrow? Yes, we'll make those peanut butter sandwiches. And maybe watch more videos of Earth animals? Of course. Good. Kresh yawned, showing all his sharp teeth. I like learning about your world. One by one, the cubs fell asleep. Their breathing synchronized and their stripes pulsed together in a slow, steady rhythm. Yuna sat in the chair and watched them, these small predators who had become her responsibility. She thought about the past 2 days, the fear she had felt when she first saw them, the chaos of the kitchen disaster, the laughter and cleaning that came after, the questions and curiosity they showed about everything. These cubs were nothing like she had expected. Yes, they had dangerous instincts. Yes, they could be chaotic and unpredictable, but they were also kind, intelligent, and eager to understand the universe around them. Her tablet chimed softly with a message. It was from her supervisor on Earth Station 3, Lieutenant Kim, checking in. Status report on Vraxian cubs? Any issues? Yuna smiled and typed her response. No issues. The cubs are well. We had a small incident with a kitchen mixer, but everything is fine now. They're quick learners and very curious about human culture. She decided not to mention the flower explosion, the honey disaster, or the frosting in her hair. Some things were better explained in person. The next morning, Yuna woke up stiff and sore from sleeping in the chair. She had intended to return to her own room after the cubs fell asleep, but she must have dozed off herself. The cubs were already awake and sitting quietly nearby, watching her. "Do all humans sleep in chairs?" Tor asked. "That seems uncomfortable." "No, I didn't mean to fall asleep here." Yuna stretched, her back cracking. "What time is it?" "The sun has been in the window for many minutes," Vala said. "We have been waiting for you to wake up." "You could have woken me." "Mother says it is rude to wake sleeping beings unless there is danger," Kresh explained. "Was there danger we did not notice?" Yuna laughed. "No danger, but thank you for being considerate." They went to breakfast and Yuna was relieved to see the kitchen still clean from yesterday's work. She made a simple breakfast of toast and fruit, which the cubs ate politely, even though she could tell they would have preferred something more meat-based. "Now," Yuna said after they finished eating, "are you ready to learn about peanut butter sandwiches?" The cub's stripes lit up with excitement. "Yes, but we must be careful this time," Kresh said seriously. "We will not make another disaster." "No disasters," Vala agreed. "No mixing tools that spin," Tor added. Yuna pulled out bread, peanut butter, and jelly. She showed the cubs each ingredient, letting them smell and examine everything. "The peanut butter has a strong smell," Kresh observed. "It's made from peanuts, which are a type of legume, a plant that grows underground." "You eat plants?" Vala sounded skeptical. "Humans eat both plants and meat. We're omnivores." "Omnivores," Tor repeated slowly. "That is a good word." Yuna demonstrated how to spread peanut butter on bread. She moved slowly, explaining each step. The cubs watched with intense focus, their natural hunting instincts turned toward learning instead of chasing. "Now you try," Yuna said, giving each cub a piece of bread and a spoon of peanut butter. Kresh went first. He held the bread carefully in one hand and the spoon in the other. His claws made it difficult to hold things properly, but he managed to spread the peanut butter across the bread even if the result was a bit messy. "Good job," Yuna encouraged. Vala tried next. She used her claws to hold the bread flat against the counter, then spread the peanut butter with careful, controlled movements. "This is like preparing prey," she said thoughtfully. "Careful cuts in the right places. That's one way to think about it," Yuna said. Tor struggled more than his siblings. His hands were smaller, and the peanut butter kept sticking to his claws. But he didn't give up. He adjusted his grip, tried different angles, and eventually succeeded in spreading a thin layer across his bread. "I did it," he chirped happily. "Now for the jelly." Yuna showed them the jar of grape jelly. "This is sweet and made from fruit." The cubs spread jelly on second pieces of bread, then put the two pieces together to make sandwiches. The final products weren't perfect. The peanut butter and jelly weren't evenly spread, and some of the sandwiches were a bit squashed, but they were recognizable as food. "Now we eat them," Yuna said, taking a bite of her own sandwich. The cubs bit into their sandwiches carefully. Their expressions changed from uncertainty to surprise to delight. "It is sweet and salty at the same time," Kresh said. "The texture is interesting," Vala added. "Smooth and sticky." "I like it," Tor declared. "This is better than cookies would have been." "Well, we never actually made the cookies, so we don't know that for sure," Yuna pointed out. "True, but this was easier." And no disasters happened. They finished their sandwiches, and Yuna felt a sense of accomplishment. They had successfully prepared food together without destroying the kitchen. It was a small victory, but an important one. "Lieutenant Yuna," Kresh said, licking peanut butter from his claws. "When Father returns tomorrow, what will Ambassador Thaylor arrived early? Much earlier than expected." Yuna woke to the sound of heavy footsteps in the corridor outside the cubs' sleeping room. She jerked awake in her chair, momentarily confused about where she was and why she had a blanket wrapped around her. Then she remembered. The cubs. The past 3 days. The kitchen disaster that seemed like it had happened both yesterday and a lifetime ago. The cubs were still sleeping in their pile, their bioluminescent stripes pulsing slowly with their breathing. They looked peaceful and small, and completely innocent. The door opened. Ambassador Thaler filled the doorway, his massive frame blocking out the light from the corridor. His yellow eyes swept the room, taking in the scene, his 3 cubs sleeping peacefully, and the human liaison sitting in a chair wrapped in a blanket, with a pillow behind her head and a tablet showing a child's drawing on her lap. Una stood quickly, trying to smooth down her clothes and failing. "Ambassador Thaler, you're back early." The negotiations concluded ahead of schedule. His voice was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. "The treaty has been signed." It was, surprisingly successful. "That's wonderful news." Thaler's gaze moved to his sleeping cubs, then back to Una. "You are still here?" "Yes, sir. You did not request an early transfer. You did not flee in terror. You did not lock yourself in a bathroom." "No, sir. And you are sleeping in a chair in my cub's room." Una felt her face heat with embarrassment. "They asked me to stay while they fell asleep. I must have dozed off. It happened last night, too. I should probably get a better chair or—" "They asked you to stay?" Thaler interrupted. His stripes, which had been a steady blue, flickered with what might have been surprise. "Yes. They said they felt safer knowing I was close." Thaler was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "In 6 cycles of life, my cubs have never asked anyone outside our family to stay while they sleep. Not their teachers, not their caretakers. Not even their grandmother. Oh, I didn't realize that was significant." "It is very significant, Lieutenant Kim." Thaler stepped into the room, moving with surprising quietness for someone so large. He looked down at his sleeping children, and something in his expression softened. "They trust you." "I hope so. We had a good 3 days together. Mostly." "Mostly?" Thaler's eyes sharpened. "Explain." This was it, the moment Una had to tell him about the mixer disaster. She had prepared a speech in her head, a careful explanation that would make it sound not so bad. But looking at Ambassador Thaler's serious face, she decided to just tell the truth. "We had an incident in the kitchen. On the second day, I was teaching them how to make cookies and things got out of control. There was a mixer involved and flour and eggs and honey and chocolate chips, and by the end of it the entire kitchen was destroyed and I had frosting in my hair." Thaler stared at her. "Frosting in your hair?" "Yes, sir, quite a lot of it." "And my cubs?" "Were covered in various baking ingredients." Kresh looked like a ghost. Vala was sticky with honey. Tor was more sugar than cub. Thaler's expression didn't change. Una couldn't tell if he was angry or amused or about to fire her on the spot. "And then what happened?" he asked. I laughed. "You laughed?" "Yes, sir. Because it was funny. We all looked ridiculous and the kitchen was a disaster, and sometimes the only thing you can do in a situation like that is laugh." "And how did my cubs respond to this laughter?" "They were confused at first, but then they understood. We cleaned the kitchen together. It took hours, but we got it spotless. And I think they learned something important." "What did they learn?" "That mistakes aren't the end of the world, that you can make a mess and fix it, that sometimes the best response to chaos is laughter and then teamwork." Una met Thaler's gaze steadily. "And that humans are flexible. We adapt. We find ways to make things work even when everything goes wrong." Thaler was quiet again. His stripes flickered through several colors, blue, purple, green, which Una's training had told her meant complex emotions. "Show me the kitchen," he finally said. Una's heart sank. She had cleaned it thoroughly, but maybe he would see evidence of the disaster. Maybe there was still flour in the cracks or chocolate in the corners. Maybe he would. When they reached the kitchen and Thaler turned on the lights, he stopped in the doorway. The kitchen gleamed. Every surface was clean. Everything was organized. The mixer sat in its proper place, innocent and harmless. There was no sign that anything had ever gone wrong. "This is the kitchen where the disaster occurred?" Thaler asked. "Yes, sir. We cleaned very thoroughly." Thaler walked around the space, examining everything with careful attention. He opened cabinets and drawers. He checked under appliances. He even looked at the ceiling. "Lieutenant Kim," he said finally, "this kitchen is cleaner than it has been since we moved onto this ship." The cubs worked very hard. They wanted to fix their mistake. "They cleaned it themselves?" "With my supervision, yes. Well, I did most of the mopping because the mop was too tall for them. But they did all the wiping and organizing and reaching high places. Vala can climb walls, did you know that?" I did know that. It has led to several incidents at home. Thaler turned to face her, and his expression had changed. He looked less stern now, more thoughtful. You could have cleaned this yourself while they slept or played. You could have pretended the disaster never happened. Why did you make them help? Because they needed to learn that they could fix their mistakes, that they had the power to make things right again. And because we were a team. Teams work together. Thaler nodded slowly. You understand children, Lieutenant Kim. Not just human children. Children of any species. I try. I grew up in a big family. I know that kids need boundaries, but also understanding. They need to know they can make mistakes without being destroyed by them. The other liaisons did not understand this. They saw danger and reacted with fear. They tried to control my cubs through authority or distance, but you. Thaler gestured at the clean kitchen. You let them be children. You let them make mistakes and learn from them. Is that not what childhood is for, learning? Many species do not see it this way. They see childhood as a time to enforce obedience, to break wild spirits and create compliant adults. Thaler's stripes flickered with what might have been anger or sadness. This is why I chose to bring my family to Earth Station 3, because I heard that humans view children differently, that you value curiosity and creativity even when it creates chaos. We do, Yuna confirmed. Chaos is how children learn. You can't explore if you're afraid to touch anything. You can't discover if you're not allowed to experiment. They returned to the sleeping room. The cubs were starting to wake now, their stripes brightening as consciousness returned. Father? Kresh's voice was sleepy and confused. You are back? I am back, my son. All three cubs scrambled out of their sleeping pile and rushed to their father. He knelt down and gathered them in his arms, and Yuna saw a side of Ambassador Thaler that she hadn't seen before. Not the stern diplomat or the fearsome Vraxian, but a father who had missed his children. Did you have a good time with Lieutenant Yuna? Thaler asked. Yes, Vala said. She taught us about earth animals and peanut butter sandwiches and how to clean kitchens. And she laughed when we made the mixer disaster, Tor added. Instead of being angry, she laughed. She showed us that mistakes can be funny, Kresh explained, and that humans are flexible and adaptable and good at finding solutions. Thaler looked at Yuna over his cubs' heads. There was something in his expression now that might have been respect, or approval, or gratitude. Maybe all three. Lieutenant. Kim, he said formally, my cubs speak very highly of you. They're wonderful children, Ambassador. It was an honor to spend time with them. Would you be willing to continue as their liaison? The negotiations were successful, but there will be more meetings, more diplomatic functions, more times when my mate and I must leave them in someone's care. Yuna felt a warm glow in her chest. I would love to. The cubs cheered, their stripes blazing bright with happiness. But, Thaler continued, perhaps we should establish some rules about kitchen activities. No mixers, Kresh said immediately. No flour bags near the edge of the counter, Vala added. And no climbing into ovens to see what's inside, Tor finished. Thaler looked at Yuna with his eyebrows raised, or the Vraxian equivalent. I am afraid to ask. It's better if you don't, Yuna assured him. But I promise from now on we'll stick to simple recipes that don't require power tools. That seems wise. The cubs wanted to tell their father everything about the past 3 days. They all talked at once, interrupting each other, finishing each other's sentences. They told him about the animal videos and the kitchen disaster and the peanut butter sandwiches and the hide-and-seek game and the drawing they made for Yuna. Thaler listened to all of it with patience and attention. He asked questions. He made interested sounds in the right places. He laughed when they described how Yuna had looked covered in flour and frosting. I wish I could have seen that, he said, his stripes bright with amusement. It was very funny, Kresh confirmed. She looked like she had been in a battle with food and lost. I did lose that battle, Yuna admitted. Food was definitely the winner. Eventually, the cubs excited storytelling.